what's up, you guys? Welcome to Grom Garage at TST Industries. It's really just TST Industries Garage, but this is what we're working on today. We have the 3rd generation Grom here. This is one of our United States Groms. We put a bunch of work into this already, cosmetically so far, and we would like to protect our investment. Should we go down in a low side, high side, whatever, we want to make sure that as many of the vital components get protected 100%, and then also minimize damage on some of the controls, rear sets, footrests, rotors, things like that. So we've come up with this crash protection set here. This is our version of the frame sliders for this bike. It's more like a sub-cage type deal where you have brackets that attach to the motor case and the frame to motor mount, and then also have this middle bar that makes the entire thing into a cage. So what we were going for is more protection than just the standard frame sliders that you see available for these bikes. I don't know if any company has come out with those for this bike, because as opposed to the previous generation Groms, there is no good mounting area on the cylinder where they used to mount to. What I saw was brackets that mount to the motor case here in the cylinder. Technically, there is a place here, but that's just not smart, man. You go down, you hit the ground, and you're propagating forces up through your cylinder that is still carrying that piston that's going in and out of that bore. Probably not a good idea to land on that. So we thought, let's attach to the frame. Let's make a nice robust mid bar to tie it all together and have nice anodized aluminum 6061 billet aluminum brackets that fortify the entire kit in between all the points that the forces from a hit would be distributed across. Cosmetically, we always like to do a good job so that the black components kind of disappear into the bike and the delrin components match the black aluminum as much as possible. And then we also include these cosmetic caps that close out the holes through which you have access to the hardware, but the hardware is kind of unsightly, so I want to do something about that, and then also give you guys the ability to accent the bike should you want to. The black caps come stock, come by default with these kits. We have an array of different colors that you could choose. For this particular bike, I like a lot of red. We're gonna go with the red. We already have the frame washers and some other accents that we have in red, and this is gonna match very nicely. So let's push that out of the way. In just a minute, I will show you guys how to build this into sub chunks, little sub assemblies that will enable us to easily fit it on the bike. I've already gone ahead and marked off some of the things that we will be taking off with yellow. This just illustrates to you what we're taking off and makes my job a little bit simpler. We designed a similar set for the previous 2 generation Groms several years ago, and we've actually had people crash test them, not on purpose, but stuff happens. And all the remarks we got, all the feedback we got is positive. These things are really well designed and they really do their job. So I hope you like what you see. Let's start wrenching. I'm ready if you guys are. All right, so what we have here on the counter is a pretty much built kit with the bike missing. Obviously, this does not get to you in this form. It comes with separate components in a box. I'm gonna show you how to build the sub-assemblies, and then we'll go over to the bike and perform the installation. Let's grab some parts out of the box. Here you see a sheet that I've printed out from our product page on tstindustries.com. We have several different sheets that you could download in PDF format that will guide you through the little nuances of this. I'm gonna be going from my sheet. I encourage you guys to print out a sheet of your own, and that way everything I say will be clear. Let's just set out the parts for now. I like to group the parts up in little subgroups. Got a hardware baggie, got a spacer baggie, 2 other spacers. Obviously, we talked about replacing the black caps with the red caps. The separate caps with accent colors are a separate item that you have to include in your purchase if you want to take advantage of using these. Just wanted to note that. Each one of these spacers does have a laser engraved logo and part number on here. So when you're following along and trying to see which parts are which, identify which parts are which, that will help you with doing just that. On these spacers, we actually have the numbers, part numbers on the ends. Okay, so for our purposes here on the bench, we are going to agree that the front of the bike would be going this way, and therefore this would be the right bracket and this would be the left bracket. I'm going to arrange all of my components spatially so that we just take one chunk, put it on the bike, the other chunk, put it on the bike. Right, left. Now, the right side gets the longer spacer because the engine's inset more, so we need to space out our puck a little bit longer to that side. The puck must have one of these spacers in it. The flange goes towards the outside. Remaining puck, spacer, and inner spacer goes on the left side. Obviously the tie bar goes in between. We have these robust M10 bolts. Long one goes this, short one goes with this, and the super duper long one will go through here, through the frame, motor, back out here, and get fastened down with this nylock locking nut. On the head side, we will use the large washer that is provided in the kit. Then we need to identify the spacers that go with this frame and engine connection. Obviously, we will need one of these, one of these. The reason why I know right off the bat is because those are the only ones that fit this large bolt without slop. If we were to put our M6 screws through here, they'd be very sloppy. So I will spare you identifying the part numbers here. I will just let you know that on the left side we have the long one, on the right side we have the short one. So now we have this prearranged, we have this prearranged, we are ready for the rest of the hardware. Now, there are four different lengths of hardware, sorry. They are denoted in our sheets. They do have identifier balloons and they show you the locations where they actually go. What I'm going to do is show you an alternate way of identifying these, alternate to measuring them. Obviously you can measure them and find out the lengths, and that's how they're identified. These actually don't have part numbers on them, they're just identified by the length. This is a 40, there's a 50, there's a 60, and two 55s. So what I like to do is group them all together, smallest to largest, and identify the two that are the same. Those are the 55s. And that would correspond to our location 21, which is here and here. So I will put that through left bracket, bottom forward, and top. And then number 22 is a 60, so that would make it the longest one in the batch. And that goes in the rear lower hole here. Now we have this ready. So now we just have these two remaining screws. Number 20 is a 50, number 19 is a 40. You have just two different lengths. Obviously, 40's shorter, it goes in the rear, and the remaining one goes in the front. Nice and easy, right? All right, let's grab the appropriate spacers. Like I mentioned, they are engraved. You can just take the number, look where it goes, and the diagrams show you. Here we have spacer 1090. Spacer 1090 goes in location 9, which is left side, rear bottom. Okay, next spacer we're gonna look for is spacer number 8. There are 2 of these, so that immediately leads me to believe that these are the spacers because I have 2 of these, whereas I have 1 of each of these. That is spacer 1091, and that does correspond to number 8. And these go in these locations on the left side sub-assembly. That probably won't want to stay. That's all right. All right, we have 2 left over. We have 2 screws here. Number 5 spacer corresponds to 1093. Boom. It goes in this location. And elimination tells us that last one goes there. All right, so we're pretty much all set here. We're ready to go and disassemble some of the parts on the bike. Let's go ahead and do that, and then we will bring these individual sets over to there and get them installed. Like I mentioned in the intro, I have already marked the parts that are getting disassembled from here. These 2 screws will be disassembled using an 8mm socket. This one, this nut back here, will use a 14mm socket. As you can see here, we have a hook device that is meant for routing this wire. That will come off. We are not reusing that. Let's go ahead and start with these 2 screws. None of this hardware is getting reused, so feel free to just toss it to the side in the parts bin. Now we'll use that 14mm socket. At this point, the main bolt here should be able to be popped through. Just make sure that it's loose. All right, this side's ready. Let's hop on the other side. We're gonna follow the same logic on this side of the bike. This is already loose, so that'll come out most likely by hand. And then these 3 will have to come off. An additional hook here that needs to come off. Remove it off this wire here and make it gone. Now I've taken the left side pre-assembly with all the spacers and the appropriate hardware that we pre-assembled on our table, and I have it ready to go in here. I'm going to engage the screws by hand, but not turn them in any substantial amount. I need to fit the large spacer in between this plate and the frame component here, and then the really long bolt with the washer on it goes through this connection. All right, I'm going to turn these in to bottom out, but still by hand. We don't want to tighten these up all the way just yet. I'm going to be using a 5mm Allen on these connections. And now our mid bar gets aligned here and does have threads inside. We get the left side frame slider components here. And we start those threads. I'm backwards on my arm placement. A bit more dexterity in my right hand. I'll be using a 17mm socket to engage this thread. So now we'll just bottom this out, but not fully tighten it. We'll wait till all the parts are on the other side, then we'll go through a tightening sequence. All right, let's hop on to the other side. Okay, now on this side of the bike, let's start by putting the appropriate spacer here. I showed which one that is on the table. I've brought over the right side sub-assembly, bracket, screws, and also the spacers. Let's go ahead and get that fitted on here. Just want to note on the right side of the bike, before you start turning any hardware in, make sure that this is loose and not clamped. Do not want to strain that wire in between two contact surfaces. Again, 5mm. And we have the locking nut on this side. Let's turn that in until the locking element grips. And our right side pre-assembled slider set, 17mm socket for that. Need to align this a little bit better. There we go. We start the threads, go to bottom. And at this point, we will start tightening the Allen screws down here. For that purpose, I will be using a torque wrench set to 8.5 foot-pounds or 102 inch-pounds. The equivalent in Newton meters is 11.5. We'll quickly spin around to the other side and tighten the same screws on this side to the same setting. Now for the larger screws, the larger bolts, we will use 40 foot-pounds, which is equivalent to 54 Newton meters. I'm going to start up here. I'm going to have to tighten progressively because I'm having a little bit of spin here. All right, left side's done. That side's done. We're looking good. Now we'll need to get this all the way to the bottom. For that purpose, I will need a second holding device. So I will need to hold this bolt in this location from the other side while I turn the nut in. Use a 17mm box wrench on the other side. So I actually had to ask for an assist here because it's very cumbersome to hold this on the other side while I go ahead and tighten it down. Also switch to a deep socket because the bolt ends up sticking out so far that you actually do need a deep socket to tighten this fully. Let's go ahead and torque it. All right. And the last thing that remains here in this assembly process is to put in the caps. Like I said, we're choosing the red caps because they match everything else. They just press in. They do have an O-ring. You press in and snap, and that's it. I'm gonna do that on the other side. And that'll be that. All right, this took just a couple minutes using pretty basic tools. And if you noticed, we already have other delrin components that are sacrificial and do take the energy of a crash, but there's nothing here protecting any of the engine components, any of the controls and footrests. So now this bike is fully protected. Like I said, we've crashed these things at a track, on the streets. They always prove to be a very crash carnage minimizing component. So if you guys do like these, head on over to tstindustries.com. We do have these ready for you to purchase, and we also have all these other parts that you see on this bike. Thanks for watching. Hope to hear a comment from you guys. Hit that subscribe button and see you later.